Thank you for joining Peter and me. Look, Peter and I have both argued now for, well, 2 years or more that energy policy is the biggest issue facing this country. It is a subset of economic policy. Without economic growth, there is no money for anything. That's where Scott Morrison is batting for Australia when he says you can't saddle Australians with either benefits taken away or new taxes totalling almost $400 billion without flattening the economy. Now, Scott Morrison will admit he knows not much about horse racing. But as he said to me this week, put someone of my weight on Winx and it wouldn't win one race, let alone 33 in a row. Similarly, the weight of new taxes will crush the economy. But we've got a tax on retirees. Franking credits denied. Stand negative gearing on its head. Rents will go up. The value of your house goes down. Electric cars. He wants a charging station in every house. You pay $7,000 if you're lucky. That's a housing tax. He wants to increase the capital gains tax by 50%. Punish everyone making a quid. If you earn more than 180 grand, you'll pay 49 cents in the dollar, not 47. He's going to tax your super. Another 34 billion. He's going to tax your car if it emits more than 105 grams of carbon dioxide per kilometre. I mean, I could go on. No economy can withstand this, believe me. But then there's Bill Shorten's energy policy. This is the envelope for the national economic suicide note. Even if the economy could survive every other attack that I've just outlined, and it couldn't, Labor's energy policy is the killer blow. 50% renewable energy target by 2030. Their coalition partner, the Greens, want 100%. By the way, they also want death duties. Then a 45% reduction in carbon dioxide emissions, as if carbon dioxide was some problem. It's the source of all plant life. But it's part of the global warming hoax, as I said to you earlier. Now, wonder Bill Shorten doesn't want to put a cost on his energy policy. And I said, when he argues the cost to the taxpayer is practically nil, Bill, I'm sorry, you are lying. It's an awful word to use, lying to the electorate. And he repeated the lie last Friday night. Quote, not a cost to the taxpayer. Well, tonight, and I take responsibility for this idea, I thought we'd make Peter my guest in this segment because she knows what damage this wild and extravagant economic behaviour will do to the economy. She fought with her then boss, Tony Abbott, to abolish the carbon tax and abolish the mining tax and, of course, turn back the boats. She was hated and vilified by the left, but she was right. Abbott won 25 seats from the Labor Party. Make no mistake, the political ground is shifting towards Morrison on economic policy, and the central issue of energy is energy policy. So here we go. My colleague becomes my guest, but let me say this, and I don't care about embarrassing her. None is better than this lady, and I mean none. She's seen it and done it all and won in the doing. Welcome to the program.
Now I've got every right to be terrified, interviewed by Alan Jones.
But now just come back. There's the cost to the taxpayer. You had this with the carbon tax and the mining tax. He says the cost to the taxpayer is practically nil. Not a cost to the taxpayer.
It's worse, I think, under this policy than the carbon tax because it was much smaller in scale. A much smaller policy. When we repealed the legislation, you could take out that 10% component. I mean, the only time our power bills in this country have fallen over the last decade is in and around the removal of the carbon tax, and it was a 10% drop. Every other time we've doubled our renewable energy target in a decade, we've doubled the price of electricity. Now, Bill Shorten wants to take it up at another great level of increase, both the emissions reduction component and the renewable energy component, plus the subsidised renewable energy to get these big players into the market, literally billions of dollars.
But you see,
cars are coming, Alan, and we know agriculture's coming.
Sorry, Peter. He says, this issue about giving us a number, look, I don't think that's possible to do. But, of course, then, this is what he said last Friday, but when the previous debate was on, he said, of course, you do have to spend some money. I mean, the bloke does it. He knows all right. He knows the cost.
Let me tell you, We had to cost those climate policies in opposition to go into government. We didn't even have, like he does, the Parliamentary Budget Office. They were costed then in 2010, they were costed again in 2013, both what the coalition would do, but we also had to know what Labor were doing, what their costs were, because you'd take them out of your own budget numbers. Bill Shorten has got the wherewithal. Absolutely has the wherewithal to cost. He just doesn't want to tell you about it.
Well, of course, you've got Dr Brian Fisher, who advised Australia in the Kyoto climate change negotiations. He was the lead author of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. He's a former head of the Australian Bureau of Agriculture and Resource Economics under both Labor and the Coalition. I might add, for his trouble, this comes back to the way we opened the show, and Scott Morrison having eggs thrown at him and so on. For his trouble, Dr Fisher has been personally targeted and his house has been bombarded because the climate change mob know that the electorate are waking up and they're losing the battle. Dr Fisher released a report on the cost. Separate from that, Professor Warwick McKibben argued that the price of carbon credits has risen dramatically since 2015 and that Labor's policies would likely cost Australia's economy $60 billion more than those of the Coalition. Dr Fisher said all sorts of adjustments had to be made. Back to Peter. So he said the job losses by 2030, Dr Fisher, could be between 160,000 and 330,000.
And look, as others will tell you, economists will tell you, people like Dick Smith who've employed people in technology will tell you, it also happens at a time when we have a collision with robotics and automation. So we're really putting our young people and unskilled workforce under pressure with all of these changes, and removing ourselves from heavy industry, manufacturing in this country. I have to say, as someone who's read a lot of national security briefing material in government, Alan, if we stop making steel in this country, if we lose a heavy manufacturing component, the skilled workforce in those skilled areas, I worry about the national security implications. I really do.
Well, of course, you see, we said before, and we won't canvass this tonight, electricity generation only provides 32% of carbon dioxide emissions, agriculture and transport 32%. What this means to the agriculture industry, he won't say. What it means to transport, he won't say. But they are telling us, Dr Fisher, you'll have lower wage growth between 3 and 11%. That means if you're on, say, about $106,000 a year, you're going to lose between $3,000 and $11,000. But more importantly, wholesale electricity prices, this is not you or me or some alarmist, it's Dr Fisher says, will increase by 2030 by at least 50%.
And look, Dr Fisher's put this material out. It's difficult to model. He is a world expert in modelling. He's an economist in this area. There's nothing here from Labor saying that he's wrong. They're disagreeing with him, but they're not putting up an alternative figure. No. All the other Labor-associated think tanks, they're not disputing his numbers. No. Greenpeace and all the other sort of activists out there, not disputing his numbers.
None of them are challenged.
No one is saying, incredibly, in the credible world, even those on the left, no one is saying he's wrong.
No, that's right, not challenged. And that doesn't, nothing we've said yet embraces the coalition partner of Labor, the Greens. They want a 100% renewable energy target. They want to ban coal exports. You're talking about a cost to the economy. That's $66 billion a year from coal exports. The Greens want that to be banned, and very significant sections of the Labor Party.
Well, and also, Zali Steggall wants a 60% renewable energy target. We know that Rob Oakeshott, who's getting very, very close to winning the seat of Cowper, if you look at the published polls, remember he was the clown that was there when Julia Gillard was actually one of the last seats to come her way to form government, the hung parliament government in 2010. He wants 100% renewable energy target. So this will be their negotiating power. If Labor gets close but doesn't actually get over the line, requires minority governments support to form a minority government, these clowns will come in with these sorts of requirements.
I wrote about this in the Australian newspaper. If you've got it today, on page 6 it is. Let me just say this. When Bill Shorten then went on FM radio and they said, well, Mr Shorten, you know, they've done no homework, but they said, what about the cost of this? These are his words. This is an alternative Prime Minister explaining the cost of his energy policies. If you had a friend who was perhaps on the large size, the chubby side, and they had 10 Big Macs a day, there's a cost to not eating the Big Macs. But in the long term, it's an investment, isn't it? Sure, there's a cost to exercising, but there's a benefit. Now, which do you measure? The cost or the benefit? Or do you accept that it's all part of a total package? So there we are. We explain energy policy on the basis of 10 Big Macs.
Oh, let me play you a grab today. This is Bill Shorten today. I've never seen anything like it. Have a listen.
Everything's been going up except people's wages. We're at 0% inflation.
Everything's been going up except for people's wages, Alan, and we have zero inflation.
The bloke is absolutely clueless. But this is about carbon dioxide. Remember the great mess that is carbon dioxide. Now, I'm not sure whether I've got something to shove up on the screen here now, because have we... It doesn't... Yes. Now, here we are. This is the atmosphere, right? And what's in the atmosphere? Well, nitrogen is 78%, oxygen 21%, carbon dioxide is 0.04%. Go to the next grab here. I think I've got to put something down there. So, the percentage of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, 0.04%. The percentage of that 0.04% worldwide, created by human beings, 3%. The percentage of the 3% of the 0.04% created by Australia is 1.3%. Now, given that, I brought something in here. Come on, Peter. Given that an
like
eyeful...
the barrel girl.
She's the barrel girl here. Given that an eyeful is better than an earful, here we brought 1 and 3... This is the atmosphere. 1 3/4 kilos of rice.
Okay.
Peter will tip it out. Have a look at this.
So this is the atmosphere.
Have a look at it. This is the rice. Get the cameras on it. Keep going. 1 3/4 kilos of rice. Remember, it's 0.04% of the world's atmosphere carbon dioxide. 3% of that human beings create around the world, and 1.3% is created by Australians.
There you go.
How much?
All the atmosphere. Hang on.
There's the atmosphere. All of that is the atmosphere. Now, all of it. Bring it over here. Of all of that, the Australian contribution of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is equal to, there we are. Let's have the camera up on it. Can you see it? 1 grain. Can't see it. Where's our camera? Come on, boys, you're asleep at the wheel here. There it is. 1 grain. This is the atmosphere. Here it is here. And that is Australia's... Yeah, look at it. Australia's contribution to carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is that grain out of the whole atmosphere, and we write a national economic suicide note. Staggering. And who's swallowing this stuff? I mean, this is the hoax.
I don't think anyone who has read some of the detail or now is starting to get their head around it, Alan, believe everything that Bill Shorten has to say, or indeed Labor or the Greens. But I worry that young people don't even want to contest the issue. They're not necessarily even open to hearing the alternative argument.
They're brainwashed, aren't they? Let me ask you then, perhaps the most important question that the viewers would be interested in, given all your experience in this field. There's Australia's carbon dioxide here. 1 grain out of 1 3/4 kilos. Our carbon dioxide contribution to the atmosphere. Staggering. Staggering that people could just be so stupid, that politicians could be so dumb, but they don't do any homework, you see. They don't read. This lady and I do our homework. There it is there. Peter, with all your experience, let me ask this. Can a party with a 50% renewable energy target today, 50% renewable energy target, in bed with the Greens, with a 100% renewable energy target, can such a party win an election?
No, if people understand what it means. But they can win if they try and pull the wool over people's eyes. So there you go again. That's why Bill Shorten won't put the numbers out there. He is wanting to skate through. He's got 2 weeks to go. All he has to do is survive another 2 weeks before people find out what it will cost them.
Well, of course, this is before, Peter, we start talking about the electric cars, the cost. Because the electric cars, if your car emits 105 grams of carbon dioxide, or more than 105 grams, you'll be fined $100 for every gram over 105.
That's right. And the Australian Automobile Association, I got some detail out there today.
Billions.
Yes, $3 billion tax it will...
But hang on, you've got to charge the car. How do you charge the car? They have said they will expect every home, renovated or new, to have a charging station in it. You'll pay for it, $7,000 or $8,000. That's a housing tax of about $5 billion. They love the money.
Yeah,
they love the money.
They're also expecting everyone to have these charging stations at home to have three-phase power to their house. Most homes don't have three-phase power. So if the whole street's then suddenly got to put in three-phase power, then you've got to upgrade the transmission to that street. Well, there goes your rates. And you've got to upgrade the transmission to the suburb where the streets are in. More cost to local government or state government that will be passed down to you.
Peter, there'll be no cost.
And
the cost will be nil.
Well, come on.
The cost will be nil. He said it.
Yes. And all of these, he doesn't tell you this, does he? All of these wind farms around the country, we've now got to the point we've tipped into 70%. 70% of them are foreign-owned.
It's absolutely foreign-owned. And our money is subsidising them $3 billion a year. Now, before we go to the break, Mr Shorten, I know you've got all your staff monitoring what we're saying. Let me say this. If you think you can explain your energy policy costs in relation to, say, 10 Big Macs, then I'll tell you what, people are laughing at you and they actually think this is a joke. To the viewers, Mr Shorten, I say this, you won't tell them what the cost is, so we don't know what your cost is. And I'm saying to you, when we don't know, we'll vote no. 11 days to go.